Greetings, fellow conquerors, and welcome back to another Idea Groups discussion video. And today I'll be going over influence versus diplomatic ideas. A lot of people asked for this on the last video, and I decided I would discuss it. I want to add a disclaimer at the start of this video that I don't really play multiplayer, and I don't think a lot of people do play multiplayer for EU4. If it's anything like Civilization 5, 5% of people that played Civilization 5 actually played multiplayer, and that's not necessarily like PvP. A lot of that might have been co-op. So not a lot of people play this game in multiplayer, I think. But I do want to add a disclaimer that I don't really play this game in multiplayer. If you do, I don't necessarily, if anything, I respect you for playing this game in multiplayer because, it takes a lot of balls, I think, and it takes a lot of skill, and I respect you for that. But disclaimer aside, I want to go ahead and say that even though I don't play multiplayer, if you do, diplomatic ideas, of these two, diplomatic ideas is, for most intents and purposes, useless. Apart from province war score cost, and maybe cost of reducing war exhaustion, and, yeah, well, also diplomatic technology cost, I guess, can be okay. But apart from that, it's kind of a waste of an idea group. You'd be better off taking trade ideas for money, exploration ideas for colonies, or even maritime ideas just to get a better navy if, you're a country that needs a good navy. So, all of that aside, let's talk about the actual idea groups and how they work in single player. So, let's talk about influence ideas first. Influence ideas. First, we start off with tribute system, which gives you income from vassals plus 25%. Not really that good. It seems good. It's not really that good. Then we get yearly prestige, plus 0.5, and chance of new heir plus 25%. Now, it didn't used to be like this, and in fact, I actually can't remember what used to be in this slot instead. It may have just been chance of new heir, but if you're a monarchy, this is a really good idea to have, just because it reduces your chance of getting, put in a personal union, or at least always having an heir of your own dynasty. I believe it also may affect other succession things, like with other, nations and things of that nature. So, and the year of the prestige is nice, even though 0.5 is not that much. It'll at least help a little bit with the natural decay. Next we have integrated elites, which gives diplomatic annexation cost minus 25%. What does this mean? It means that annexing a vassal costs 25% less diplomatic points. And this means that in addition to saving diplomatic points by using vassals, which you should be doing regardless of who you are, if at all possible, this means that it's also going to be cheaper to, annex them, as well as, it's going to be faster because you're spending fewer points. So yeah, pretty good idea overall, I would say. Next we have state propaganda, which reduces aggressive expansion impact by minus 20%. This is extremely useful in high-tension areas, like the Holy Roman Empire, for example. Lets you take tons and tons of land that you might not be able to otherwise, and, reduces the time it takes to actually get out of potential coalitions as well. Especially if you have something like humanist, which gives improved relations over time. Next we have diplomatic influence, which just gives plus 2 to diplomatic reputation, which is really good for securing alliances that you might not be able to get otherwise. Convincing people to go to war with you, and other diplomatic actions that you may want to convince people to do. Also helps counteract the effects of sabotage reputation, which is becoming an increasingly prevalent problem, with your rivals, I've found, in the later game. Next we have Postal Service, which gives you plus 1 diplomatic relations, so that'll give you another alliance, another vassal that you can have, which is pretty useful and fits with the overall theme of this idea group. And the envoy travel time, if you're sending diplomats around the world, it can be helpful, but most of the time it's not really that big of a deal. And lastly, we have vassal force limit contribution plus 100%, which, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not entirely sure what it does, because if we go to military here and we look at the force limit section, let's let a day pass. Oh, hold on. Welcome to Pop-Up City, I guess. Hold on. Ugh, it's so unprofessional. Okay, so if we look here, we have Pegu and Kachar are both giving plus 2 to force limit. Now, let's look at these two vassals that I have. So, Kachar has something like, I don't know, a little over 100 development. Yeah. And they have 18,000 troops. So I don't know if this is affecting their own force limit, because it doesn't really seem to be affecting the amount of force limit that they're giving you, because regardless of the size, they only seem to give you one extra force limit. Now, this may be different with marches. I'm not entirely sure, but overall, this doesn't seem to be a very good idea, and so you really probably shouldn't care about it that much. Lastly, we get unjustified demands minus 50%. Now, what's this? Unjustified demands is anytime you do something in a war that is not part of the war goal, so you're doing a conquest war and you take provinces that you don't have claims on, this reduces the diplomatic cost of those peace deals, literally by half. So those provinces would cost half as much diplo to take in the peace deal, and it would cost half as much to release a nation. So pretty good overall if you like doing diplomatic actions of that nature. Okay, next let's look at diplomatic ideas. And I'm not even going over policies. Obviously, if you really want to do an in-depth analysis of these, look at the policies yourself, I would say, because there are a lot of really interesting policies that go along with these idea groups. One, for example, for diplomatic is diplomatic quantity gives you land force limit and diplomatic reputation, which is really strong, and it actually combines really well with religious ideas as well. But anyway, let's focus. So first we have foreign embassies, which gives you an additional diplomat, always useful in single player for improving relations, grabbing alliances, doing other various diplomatic actions, building spy networks, all sorts of usefulness. Next we get cabinet. We get an additional diplomatic relations slot, useful for getting another alliance or another vassal. Next we have war cabinet, which reduces the cost of reducing war exhaustion by 33%. So instead of 75, it costs something around like 56 to 60, somewhere in that range. Next we have benign diplomats, which improves your improved relations by 25%. So basically, I think what this does is instead of improving relations by 4 every month, you improve relations by 5 every month. So it reduces the amount of time you actually need to get improved relations up. Although I think it may actually be 4. So what that would it may actually be 3. And so what this actually translates to, if my math is correct, 25% of 3 is something like, I don't know, 3.7 or something like that. So every month you're going to get like an extra point, and basically what this boils down to is it reduces the amount of time needed to max out relations with a nation. It may also be good for stopping people from leaving alliances and things of that nature. Overall, this is an okay idea. I wouldn't call it great, but it does help with diplomacy. Next we have experienced diplomats, which gives +2 diplomatic reputation, which is always useful for the same reason that you have an influence. So as you can see, you get this in both diplomatic ideas and influence at about the same time as well. Next we have flexible negotiation, which reduces province war score costs by 20%. This is an extremely powerful idea that lets you take basically 20% more land in a war. Now it's important to note that it increases the amount of aggressive expansion, I believe, that you would get overall, but I'm not sure if aggressive expansion is tied to, the province war score cost. I think aggressive expansion is mainly tied to, province worth, which means that you're more or less going to get the same amount of aggressive expansion, but you would be able to take more provinces with this, or just, take the same amount of provinces and then get other things out of the peace deal. So it's useful no matter what you do with it. But just bear in mind that it may not necessarily reduce aggressive expansion. I don't think it does. Lastly, we have diplomatic technology cost minus 10%, which is a nice end to the tree, especially if you're taking a lot of diplomatic ideas or you're spending diplomatic points on something else other than tech. It'll save you a little bit of points in the long run. And for finishing the idea group, you get lowered impact on stability from diplomatic actions. This is really huge because this allows you to do silly things like, first of all, you can break royal marriages without losing stability, which is really good. And you can declare no CB wars and only lose like 1 stability instead of 2, and take less aggressive expansion from that. Anytime you would lose stability or take aggressive expansion from mostly declaring wars, but other things as well. Obviously, we discussed royal marriages. you would not lose stability in that situation, and so that would be, obviously really good. So now that we've discussed these two groups, when would I say you should take one over the other, and how should you use these groups? Influence ideas is I would say it's part of the world conquest toolkit, if I may, alongside stuff like administrative and quantity and offensive. And the reason that I say that is because this allows you to take more vassals, it allows you to get more money from your vassals, even though vassal income is minuscule at best. And it allows you to keep expanding those vassals without problems. It reduces aggressive expansion, which means you're going to get coalitions less quickly, which is something that is useful for most nations, I would say. The diplomatic annexation cost, of course, is going to help you annex vassals and save you points on that, which is always useful, especially in the same way that administrative ideas reduces core creation cost by 25%. It's just going to save you so many points if you do that sort of thing a lot. Not to mention, if you take a bunch of vassals, you're just going to have tons of extra troops to help you out in battles, which can be useful in its own right. Especially when you start out as a big nation, influence ideas is especially strong, because you can easily take vassals that aren't going to have very high liberty desire. And honestly, though, if you're not hellbent on taking trade or exploration, you can very feasibly take both diplomatic and influence in the same game, and there's basically no reason not to. You would get a massive amount of diplomatic reputation, and you get the combined bonuses of getting, province war score cost reduction, plus the aggressive expansion impact. But, a lot of people do like to take trade, a lot of people do like to take exploration ideas just for colonization. And yeah, so when do you take diplomatic ideas, though? A lot of times I would argue if you're in the Holy Roman Empire, if you're trying to become emperor, I think diplomatic ideas is a really strong way to go about doing that, since it just lets you, it gives you so much more diplomatic flexibility, so to speak, than you would have otherwise. Like if you took influence, for example. Although, obviously you could vassalize electors in the HRE, which could very easily give you a bunch of, authority. Although I think having an elector as a vassal does lower authority. I digress. So anyway, yeah, you should take diplomatic ideas when you're in a situation where you don't necessarily want to be expanding a lot. So, obviously tall empires are going to prefer diplomatic ideas to influence ideas when it comes to actually doing diplomacy and interacting with the AI. But yeah, overall, I would argue that in my experience, I find influence to be more useful just because of the aggressive expansion impact reduction. Plus, you still get a diplomatic relation, diplomatic reputation, and as well, you also get a chance of new era, which is extremely good in my opinion. And also, the unjustified demands are quite nice. But yeah, overall, I would argue definitely, influence ideas is my preferred one, but you may find that diplomatic is more your cup of tea. Really, it comes down to personal choice in single player, which one you take, and a lot of it's going to depend on your playstyle, whether you're really aggressive, in which case you would want influence, or if you like to take your time, just want to colonize and play maybe a more realistic game, where you kind of roleplay a little bit, then maybe diplomatic is going to be your thing, alongside trade and stuff like that. And that's something I don't really talk about in a lot of these other videos that a lot of people have brought up is a lot of decisions are going to be, based on your own, first of all, your own preference, and second of all, what playstyle you're using and how that affects the nation that you're playing as. But anyway, I hope I've adequately explained the differences between influence and diplomatic ideas and what kind of strategies you should be thinking about as you use them. Of course, think about what other idea groups you'll be taking as you take these, and look at the policies that you might get out of it, because that may further influence your decision. At any rate, though, thank you for joining me, my fellow conquerors, and I hope to see you guys on the next guide.